With the recent overview, I think it's fair to say that Halo Infinite's campaign looks a little bit on the concerning side, and the main reason for that is the same as when we got a little bit of a snippet of the gameplay a year ago, which we assumed would be altered a little bit after the backlash, which I presume is probably not the case, at least as far as people may want, and that is of course that Halo Infinite's campaign appears to be far less linear than previous entries into the franchise. In the past, you'd get world spaces built for the missions, and missions that were built for the world spaces. They were as big as they needed to be, and they told the story as you went, which is arguably, though traditional, a very good way to convey storytelling in a first-person shooter game, and it does this through maintained focus. Halo Infinite appears to be sporting a more open world space inside which you have camps and box-ticking exercises, which at face value doesn't seem terrible, but when you've seen this done in many games in the past, some in which it would fit far more than it would fit for Halo, you know exactly how easy it is for this sort of system to fall flat on its face. And so my main takeaway from this entire gameplay overview is the big question: why was this necessary for Halo, and can it do more harm than it could ever do good? Because I've seen it happen in the past where this sort of system implemented has simply done more harm than it ever could have done good. I suppose a similar argument could be applied to an upgrade system like this game has, but we'll get to that as it's more or less the same point, which I will explain. Outpost systems are simply not that inspired as far as game design goes. Yes, it's great that players have the ability to tackle things however they want, but what good is that when you don't feel like there's much point in tackling it in the first place? You find yourself in a basic camp-like layout that isn't original nor is it unique, and find yourself checking off boxes with uninteresting tasks. Sure, shooting up the Covenant is good fun in Halo, but when it is literally just that to no end, what's the point? Yes, destroying stuff is fun, but in the context of what you're doing, what does that do? Yes, it may provide you with skill points that you can use to upgrade yourself, but that system in itself could be implemented simply to bloat the game so that you have to level up to a certain degree before you can move on to the next bit. The risk run here is that it's all to facilitate a grind to artificially bloat the length of a game to make it seem bigger than it is, when in reality that isn't necessary in a focused first-person shooter experience like Halo used to be. And this wouldn't necessarily sound so bad if it wasn't for the historical fact that in games that do this, the meaningful content that you find within them is reduced. And I'm not saying that any of this is going to be true for Halo Infinite, but that is the concern. If I really wanted to enjoy the simple yet fun gameplay of Halo and level up for it, I would play the multiplayer. And for me, Halo campaigns have always been about that storytelling aspect first and foremost. Yes, it is fun to shoot things, and yes, it is fun to have these spaces to play around with. And never have I thought whilst playing a Halo campaign in the past that it would be fun to linger in a specific area and liberate outposts. In the games that had this system in the past, I found them to be tiresome. I found that they bloated the game. They made you grind. They took an hour's worth of content and spread it across 10 or 20. It's still only an hour's worth of content, the only difference being it now takes too much time to do. Granted, I don't think Halo's going to be as bad as other offenders, but I still think this system is going to do more harm than good and defocus that main narrative that's attempting to be told here. And the reason why I'm concerned is because I'm yet to see an outpost system implemented in a game like this where this isn't the case. Maybe it'll be a different story for campaign co-op where it could be a bit more fun to play with a mate and just chill. That sounds wrong. But that's not even going to be a part of the game on launch, which in my opinion is a huge mistake for Microsoft and 343. However, that's by the by for the time being, because my point is that's not a focus and you'll still have to slog through it solo to begin with. But maybe this system will account better for that, but until that's a part of the game, it's just not a part of the game. Now, it is fair to say that this is just a concern based on what's been seen. Maybe these camps will have more meaningful content within them, and maybe the presence of an upgrading system won't be too obstructive when it comes to simply playing the meaningful content, but if that's the case, what's the point in having it at all? If you have these outposts in the game, then they need to at least be necessary somehow, but at the same time, if they're necessary but boring, then the entire game just becomes boring. And so I suppose what's really concerning at its root is, what is the point in this unnecessary seeming system, and why does it unnecessarily run the risk of creating problems? But hey, maybe when this game launches we could be proven wrong. Halo gameplay has always been good fun, sure, but in the campaign it's always been fun with the addition of storytelling as you go. There's just no promise of that in this sort of system, and so the end result is you just wind up playing the game feeling like you're doing mind-numbing tasks because you're simply too used to doing it. And there's no promise that everything you do will have a point as far as the narrative is concerned, and so you find yourself wondering why it's even a part of the game in the first place. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure the first few hours will be alright, and of course there will be some aspect of storytelling present. It's just, to what extent is that going to be diluted? And I suppose the word that I'm looking for is imbalanced, but maybe that's just for my preference of games. I like a good story-focused main story, and I'm sure Halo Infinite is going to have a decent main story, but how much unnecessary bloat is going to be thrown in there that won't do very much for the game itself? Don't get me wrong, I don't mind a long game, in fact I quite like them, as long as they manage to maintain some level of being meaningful. That doesn't necessarily mean always, it doesn't have to. Some parts of the game can just be mindless fun for the sake of it. The dog's barking again. He's a prick, ignore him. But there's only so much mindless fun you can have before it becomes mind-numbing. And so I suppose my final point is that not every game needs to have open world spaces with outposts inside which you get checklist objectives. They bloat the game and are often used as a substitute for meaningful content, which after a certain point in my opinion completely undermines the point of having a main story in the first place. And if for no other reason, it's frustrating to see this in Halo now because simply too many games are doing it. Too many games have these open world spaces or open worlds inside which there are outposts where you can go and do checklist objectives with no real meaningful reward for doing so. Halo has so much going for it that can set it apart from these games, so I have no idea why 343 decided to add this similarity. There is nothing wrong with a linear storytelling experience, there never has been. You don't have to make a game open world to keep it interesting. You don't have to make a game even semi-linear to keep it interesting. All you have to do for a main story is tell a good main story, and for Halo the system that they've had has certainly worked in the past and can do again. Halo has had its rocky moments, but none of that was down to its level design necessarily. Granted, I never actually got around to playing Halo 5 Guardians, maybe I'll stream it on Twitch, however I'm led to believe that that game just isn't worth trying. But hey, that's enough of me chewing your ear off. Be sure to let me know what you think about this down in the comments section. Maybe this sort of game design appeals to you far more than it appeals to me, which is perfectly fine. Maybe you're in a similar boat to me, or maybe you're in a different boat altogether. All opinions are valid, I'd love to hear yours. Thank you all for watching this video, I really hope that you've enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff. That would of course be super fantastic. And also be sure to go ahead and follow me over on Twitch. You can find a link down in the description. We have good times over there, so definitely check it out.
Right, might I propose a new solution, gamers? They can't steal our corn if there is no corn. You've destroyed your joy.
And with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, take care and goodbye.